Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked on Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Darvin Ham says he didn't come to L.A. to lose.
The hell did he come here for? That's next.
You are Locked on Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked on Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see the show, to view it, to see us, our facial expressions while we talk about a 2-8 Lakers team. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Sweat Block. If you're feeling a little clammy about where the Lakers are right now, you or someone you love experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweat Block. Save 20% with the promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. Available also on Amazon.
Sweating right there.
Yeah. Travolta would be bone dry in that clip had he tried the Sweat Block. I don't think it would be quite as sexy, though. People like back in the day, they really like to see that sweat, Andy. Lakers lose 139-116. They are now on Monday in Utah. They will take the big NBA voting day to come back to Los Angeles, probably cast some ballots and lick some wounds. They're now 2-8 overall. They are 0-4 away from the crypt, only 2-4 at the crypt. No LeBron James on Monday. That is something we will get to. That foot injury finally kept him out of a game. Darvin Ham said they're going to have to be really careful with him going forward, monitoring back-to-backs, his minutes, and things like that. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Pat Bev still sick. He's got the bug that was going around, and Lonnie Walker also missed Monday's game. So the Lakers were shorthanded.
This bug is really bad that the Lakers have right now. Like, wherever, I mean, I don't want to blame it on Anthony Davis's Halloween party because that's highly speculative. And, you know, LeBron was sick before then because he actually missed the Halloween party, which is a big deal for LeBron because LeBron loves Halloween. But they need to like retrace their steps and think about like the places they've gone together.
Patient zero.
and like stop going there.
I tell you what, it's
this
like,
virus is crushing them.
Everybody was so concerned about the rainbow fentanyl and all that stuff around Halloween. They should have been concerned about this. I mean, it makes you miss COVID. Like you look back longingly at guys missing games because of COVID. This is terrible.
Simpler times.
But anyway, so the Lakers were down 3 guys, which means their bench after you got past Russell Westbrook, who was...
And Dennis Schroeder's still not available.
Dennis Schroeder's still not available. So yes, after you get past Russell Westbrook, who was great on Monday, had a really good game, another really solid game. They available to them had Matt Ryan, Juan Toscano-Anderson, Damian Jones, Scottie Pippen Jr., and Max Christie. The Lakers started Anthony Davis, Wenyen Gabriel, Troy Brown Jr., Austin Reeves, and Kendrick Nunn. I realize that, you know, Anthony Davis is the best player on either team and all that kind of stuff. I realize the Jazz were supposed to be a bit of a mockery coming into the season. They clearly are not. They're 9-3. They're the best team in the Western Conference. But like this, first and foremost, was a game the Lakers were set up to lose, both because it was in altitude in Utah, a tough place to play, but mostly because if you compare these two rosters, let's just say for a second that you're willing to stipulate that Russell Westbrook is the second player that you would draft if you were doing a draft of these teams. Andy, how many Utah Jazz people would you take before you took another Laker?
I mean, just looking at the roster right now, Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, the way he played in this game, Talen Horton-Tucker, who had the mother of all revenge dunks.
He did.
Mike Conley, I guess at his absolute best, you'd at least
I think
consider.
Conley is better than anybody the Lakers had available to them tonight. As
if nothing else, you can make the argument. You could make the argument for Malik Beasley.
For sure.
Then once you start building out roster depth, Kelly Olynyk.
Kelly Olynyk would be the third best player the Lakers had available tonight.
Quite possibly. I wouldn't say definitively, but if you can even start talking about Kelly Olynyk as your third best player, your roster's in some trouble.
And
I don't know if I'd agree with it, but
you can make a credible argument. Some people wouldn't put Westbrook ahead of, say, Markkanen or whatever. But if you're willing to stipulate the Lakers had those two guys, and after that you're taking it at the very least 5 members of the Jazz, possibly 6, that's bad. And the Lakers, the Jazz are showing what can be. It almost reminds me. Remember the Hawks a few years ago, pre-Trae Young, I think it was, had like those couple years of teams that were starless but won like the 50 games.
It was the year that Kyle Korver made an all-star team.
Right. It was
Korver and I think Jay Crowder, and
it was just a bunch of good to like better than average players. And none of them were stars, and it eventually hurt them in the playoffs. But in terms of the regular, that's what this Jazz team reminds me of. And you can get a lot of mileage out of players that fit well together, are smart, are better than average. So you look at the Lakers, and they did everything they could, I thought, on Monday to stay in the game. They had a great offensive first half. They scored 71 points, and they were losing at halftime. They were shooting over 50% from 3. They were shooting like 60% from the floor. And had been to the line and were shooting like 90% from, and they were losing. And I said to myself, that is a bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The defense of this team, and this was something that was talked about a lot, in particular by Anthony Davis, who is not happy with the way they are playing defense. The last few games, there's been some slippage. They played against good. They played against some good offensive teams. Twice against Utah. Utah has scored 269 combined points in their 2 meetings over the last 96 hours with the Lakers. But Utah in this game, particularly from behind the arc, there were some times where they were legitimately unconscious. They were legitimately hot at times. But the problem is they shot 56% overall. They had 58 points in the paint. And you're not talking about anybody on this team that you necessarily look at and say, well, you got to mine the lane with that guy around. They don't have anybody like that.
That's what the problem was. And I know Lakers fans are upset. I know Lakers fans are disappointed with how this early season has gone. And I get it. They should be. They're 2-8 and in the Western Conference, 2-8 puts you in a really tough spot because, I know the Warriors haven't played well either, but the Warriors won a title last year and get a little bit more benefit of the doubt than the Lakers do going forward. So, there is whatever margin for error the Lakers had, particularly if they had any hope of getting into the top 6 and out of the play-in, is already gone. They're 10 games in and it's already gone. They're just the roster isn't that good, and they have to figure out ways to get around it. They've got, look, Kendrick Nunn at 18 points on, if you're looking for stuff, and we'll get to some of these things next, but if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, you mentioned Dennis Schroeder hasn't played. He's going to be an important player on this team. They've been existing with an invisible Kendrick Nunn. He had 18 points. Darvin said before the game, he hoped this could be a game that kind of got him going because he started on Sunday and was useless. But on Monday, he was good, or at least better. They got to find something, and they got to find it quickly because they are already out of time. They've been injured. The schedule's been brutal, but they are out of time. There's just not much left.
Well, I mean, this is going to be interesting on 2 counts. We'll talk about it next. They have to figure out how to keep themselves believing, and that was something Darvin talked about after this game. But also, they have to figure out how to do this with LeBron perhaps requiring maintenance and monitoring over the course of the season, which is also something Darvin talked about before the game. So dealer's choice, we'll get into either one of those.
That's the kind of thing that's starting to make me sweat a little bit. Can you tell me anything that might solve that problem?
Oh, Brian, I'm so glad you asked because there is absolutely nothing worse than sweat breaking out at the absolute worst time. Like I remember one time, this years ago, I had to give a speech in the summer. It was indoors, but it was still in the summer. It's like it's hot because of the weather, and you start worrying about sweating because of the weather. So I actually wore a sport coat for this talk, like I was trying to look sophisticated and smart because I have a sport coat on. And it was actually because I was worried about pit stains. And ironically, this means sweating more because, again, sport coat in the summer. And like nobody wants to deal with this. And that's why Sweat Block wipes are your little secret to confidence. The Sweat Block wipes work for up to 7 days per use. Like apply them on a Sunday and you will stay dry the entire week. Like this is mind-blowing science, people. Don't ask me how it works.
It's really effective for the lazy.
If you or someone that you love, someone really lazy, they're experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, even helps with odor, try Sweat Block. Save 20% with the promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon.
Yeah, you gave me a lot to think about there in terms of like look, the Lakers, Darvin talked about after the game, like he didn't come here to lose. The Lakers didn't bring him here to lose. They're going to turn a corner. Let's just stipulate that eventually they will. I'm not sure I agree with him, but let's just say they do. They're not near. They are clearly nowhere near the corner right now. And look,
I don't think they're in the zip code that contains the corner.
They are going real straight. Like the road they're on is very straight. No turns in sight. No corners.
Some dirt road. Can't see the end of it.
But it's straight. That's all we know.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers just lost their 8th in 10 tries by 23. We're riffing. So the question for me becomes like, you can say, yeah, they've been hurt. LeBron has been banged up and Pat Bev has been out and Schroeder hasn't played. And they needed everybody on all hands on deck to really give themselves a shot against a brutal schedule at the beginning of the season that got even harder when Utah and Portland didn't realize they were supposed to be terrible. How much time, like where are they going to be when they turn the corner? Like,
I don't know.
What does that even look like at this point?
I mean, to some degree, you're asking me to predict their health, and I can't predict the health and availability of everybody on this team. I mean, we're going to get into this before the show ends, but LeBron was out with.
Let's do that now. I mean, like that's part of it. Is like this is a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron missed tonight's game. He's been dealing with this recurrent left foot soreness, in addition to the virus that has been very outwardly keeping him under the weather. Like he has not looked good. Like he's looked like a guy that is playing sick. But this foot also may explain some of the issues he's had with his jump shot. Like he's not getting enough lift, some of the issues finishing, because he's not been great inside or outside the arc. He has not been great near the lane. Like I'm not going to say that I predicted this at all because I didn't, but the Lakers having one of their most efficient, prolific nights offensively, this whole season without LeBron, in a certain respect, makes sense. Like it follows a logic because LeBron has not been efficient this year and he's the highest usage guy on this team. So removing him obviously makes a lot more difficult, particularly setting up shots for other guys, because LeBron is still the best at that on this team by the distance that it's going to take from the Lakers on this dirt road to find the corner. Like
Lakers had, I mean, just as to your point, Andy, the Lakers had 15 assists on 40 field goals. Granted, road team, you tend to get fewer. That's not a lot.
No, look, AD, for example, and he did this very well. AD worked a lot in isolation. He often went out of his way to match himself up against Lauri Markkanen. He owned that matchup, and that's where some of these self-created shots came from. Russ created a lot of his own shots, but as far as creating for others, LeBron is the best on this team, and it's not even close. But this team has been, quite frankly, dealing with and getting burdened by LeBron's inefficiencies this season. So LeBron's health moving forward, how much is this foot or anything else going to be an issue for a guy turning 28 in his 20th season with a bazillion miles?
38. 28 would be great.
Oh, 38. I'm sorry. A bazillion miles on the odometer. Like, how much is Anthony Davis, who's missed a game with that back, and Anthony Davis always feels like an injury away from something? Like, these are predictive elements that I have no idea, but they're going to affect the Lakers' ability to become the best version of themselves. Like, there are times where you see a good version of this team. What you don't see, though, is a consistent good version of this team. And it's unclear how well they'll be able to maintain that consistent version of themselves, particularly, Brian, when it comes to back-to-backs, because Darvin said before the game that LeBron's availability in back-to-backs will be, quote, this was from a tweet from Dave McMenamin of ESPN, fluid.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that. I mean, unfortunately, Lakers do. Look, the schedule softens up a little bit here. If the Lakers are going to play their way back into things, it's going to be on this stretch. Now, a lot of it is on the road, but I'm not convinced that really matters much for this team. They play their next game is at the Clippers, so on Wednesday. That is a winnable game because the Clippers are struggling. Kawhi's not going to play in that game. Clippers
they've been winning more, but it's been tough.
The Clippers they are not the juggernaut yet that the people hope. The Clippers fans hope they would be. They did beat Cleveland on Monday night. The Lakers get a Sacramento team that is not great, not terrible. They're not garbage, but they're not great. There's weak a team as you're going to find, on this schedule. You get Brooklyn struggling. Kyrie, this is November 13th. About a week from now, certainly a good chance Kyrie's still not back for that. And
has it been 5? Will it have been 5 games by then? It's a minimum of 5 games. He's suspended.
I believe it will be, but even if he is, I'm not convinced he's going to be back in 5 games. He's got a lot of people to meet with between now and then. A lot of meetings to schedule. It just doesn't strike me as something that's going to be resolved in 5 games. But even then, Brooklyn lost again on Monday. They lost to Dallas, so they're struggling. Detroit, they won on Monday, but are well under 500. San Antonio is starting to come back to earth a little bit here. And you get San Antonio three games in 4, 3 out of 4 against San Antonio. They got to win a lot of these games. Like, LeBron's got to be on the floor, and unfortunately, or not, I don't think there's. I count one back-to-back in that sequence. The second of the San Antonio games, a rare back-to-back against one team in their building. They can't afford LeBron to miss much. They can't afford Anthony Davis to miss much. They can't afford a random Russell Westbrook injury or whatever. Like, they got to win these games. If they don't come out of this having at least chewed back in, some of that sub 500 record, I'm not saying all the way back to 500, but a game or two under, I don't want to say it's done, because we've got a lot of podcasts to do this year, but it ain't good.
Well, it's not done, but what might be done is the prospect of making any moves, giving up any of your limited assets to try to improve the team at all. Like, it might feel like a lost cause that you just say
this year move is what
right,
you're saying.
For better or for worse, this is going to be the team this year because we've dug too big of a hole for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, or pick some combination of players on some other team, or, this is something we're going to get into more on Wednesday's show, but like, who would theoretically you would bring in for Anthony Davis, because that has become a hot rumor, according to Bill Simmons from The Ringer. Like, you might look at it and say, this ain't the year to do it. Because like, what are you going to accomplish this year unless it's something really radical? But again, we'll get into that on Wednesday.
Yeah, just for the record, on Monday night, Hield had 20 points, and Miles Turner went for 37 and 12. Anyway,
just want to put on the record again, you and I both said pull the trigger. Do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were going to do it, it would have made sense to do it before the season.
Yeah, and look, I mean, to his credit, Russ has been playing very well since coming off the bench. Russ is frankly, Russ has moved from no longer to the problem to more often closer to being part of the solution than the
Yeah,
problem.
let's talk about that and we'll do that next because it is an interesting thing for this team in terms of thinking about. Let's assume LeBron comes back on Wednesday, is able to play, and the Lakers are able to win some of these games that are coming up. Like you now have a set. Like Russell Westbrook is your sixth man. He didn't start tonight, Monday night, and they were missing like 9 guys, and they still brought him off the bench. So Russell Westbrook is your sixth man. This gives them at least a little bit of continuity and an understanding that I think could be effective going forward. So we'll talk about that next.
BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and even esports. Got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, which I have to assume you do because you are literally listening to a sports podcast, this is the one you love the most. But if you love other ones,
like them,
right,
you're okay with them,
right? And if you can even imagine loving another sports podcast as much as this one, you can find plenty of them. Great listens over at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest, easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
It's kind of a shame that, and I'm sure Russ is enjoying this. I was on with Roger Lodge. I did, for LA people, he's down in Orange County, the ESPN AM 830, the ESPN affiliate in Orange County. And he was asking me about Westbrook and why I think it's been working so well. And I think some of it is these bench units do kind of fit with what he does better. It does put the ball in his hands more than it does with the starting lineup. He had 22 points, 8 of 14 from the floor, 5 assists, 2 turnovers. I mean, he was a minus 23, but get in line. This game wasn't on him. And it is kind of crazy to me that after all of the summertime hoo-ha and hubbub and all of the hand-wringing over Westbrook, that he is easily the best story for the 2-8 Lakers. I mean, it's not even close. But Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis did score in the fourth quarter on Monday, so that was nice. He had a 3-pointer early in the fourth that broke him out of that slump. But he's not been a great story. LeBron has not been a great story. Lonnie Walker, that's been nice. But Russell Westbrook is by far the happiest thing that the Lakers can talk about and Lakers fans can talk about. And man alive, that is ironic.
Well, I mean, in certain respects, it could only go in one direction because it was damn near impossible for it to become less positive of a story than it already was. Like you couldn't, you can't go any further underground than underground. You know what I mean? Like, once you're at like the 5th circle of hell, does it really matter if you're in the 7th? Like you're already way the hell below the surface of the earth. Look, this has made a lot of sense in terms of Russ being able to play way more within his comfort zone. You mentioned before, like the idea of he's got a bench unit that can actually play his style. It also explains why, Frank Vogel, I know there have been a lot of reports about him being concerned that he could lose Russ if he made that move last year. And, Russ last year was a 2-year project as opposed to a 1-year this one. So the politics of that
1 year
make it different.
Well, 1 year with the prospect of never playing again after this year if he doesn't figure something out.
But another, I would think at least, another element that probably prevented Frank Vogel from doing this last year is last year's team could not play at the pace that would maximize Russell Westbrook anyway. Mm-hmm. Like last year's bench would not have made sense for Russell Westbrook. This year's bench actually does.
So, look at last year's bench.
Exactly. So in this sense, like there's a lot that's sort of, serendipity for trying to make this work. And, Russ deserves a lot of credit. I think, we mentioned this before. I think there's a relief factor for him as well. Like that just, okay, we ripped the Band-Aid off this. Like, I don't have to think about, will this happen anymore? What it's going to be like. I'm just doing it. And I think he's probably discovered, like, you know what, in certain respects, this is better. Like, I actually get to do more of what I want as a player.
It was placed as this challenge that Westbrook cannot possibly be a constructive member of this team. And when's he going to be traded? When are they going to be rid of him? When is it going to be over with? And it's not the whole thing. All of the stuff you were saying is true. And I think in his sort of heart of hearts, it's like, wow, this could actually be a good role for me. And I want to talk, for Wednesday's show about what this potential transformation does for his trade value, because a Russell Westbrook that's actually productive and willing to play a role like this, perhaps on the right team or a good team or whatever, this does potentially change the calculus on where he can go and what the Lakers could do with him. But Roger was asking me about it, and I think there's this bleep you element to it. He's a very proud guy who was basically told he was done in this league and is pushing back on that. And he's the one thing you can look at with this bunch and be like, huh, that's a good story. Like, he gets cheered loudly when at home now. People want to see him in the game. They're doing like MVP chants and stuff. Like, it's kind of crazy to see.
Well, it is. It's insane. I mean, he's gone from persona non grata to dark horse mayoral candidate. Like he actually could win in LA despite having been so unpopular. Look, they're going to have to find more stuff like what Russ has discovered to keep from being defeatist. Like, this was something Darvin talked about after the game, where he said, quote, "It's not always going to be like this. We're going to turn a corner. I didn't come here to lose. They didn't bring me here to lose, but there is a process to go through." And then he later talked about wanting to bottle this up, so when they do turn it around and then they face adversity again, because that's what always happens over the course of a season, they can lean on that experience of what they went through earlier, like what we're going through right now, before eventually turning this corner at the end of the metaphorical dirt road that's really, really, really damn long. But it's going to be difficult to maintain that level of resolve, because, as you pointed out, there have been very few positives. Like, if you're looking for a B plot positive, Troy Brown Jr. has been rock solid as a role player. I mean, he's been not just solid, but he's been incredibly consistent. He's been the one guy among the non-stars that I feel like exactly what he's going to bring every single game. He's been helpful ever since entering the starting unit.
Troy Brown's been exactly what you would hope Troy Brown would be, sort of on the best case scenario.
But we've heard a lot of frustration voiced from both LeBron and AD, and those are the two leaders of this team. They are the two most important players on this team. So they're going to have to really make a conscious effort to not let this start just drown themselves, because it would be easy for that to happen.
So we'll talk on Wednesday's show about where they go here. Like I mentioned, these next 5, 6, 7 games are critical. Some interesting trade rumors and percolating about, obviously Westbrook is perpetually on the table, but what about Anthony Davis? What happens if this season goes down the drain? What could you get for Kendrick Nunn and Patrick Beverley? Like, the wheels are turning, and the Lakers are either got to turn it around pretty quickly, or some of these hypothetical conversations are going to become extraordinarily relevant much faster than any Lakers fan would want. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by, that's not the part of the show. Locked On Lakers, though, can be found on YouTube, which is a great place to go to see the show. Love to see you guys be part of this channel. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of anger and venting and frustration on Tuesday on the chat board. So please join in and subscribe while you're there. Thanks again to making Locked On your first listen of every day. Go vote.
Yes, do go vote.
We'll be back Wednesday. Oof.